The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Was it the miracle on ice? No. Was it exciting? Oh, yeah.
Canada gets fresh skaters on the ice. The outlet pass for Keller, the defenseman. Nice move, cuts to the net, score! Megan Keller, the overtime hero, United States, wins gold and ball.
Yes, Kenny Albert with the great call yesterday as the U.S. beat Canada. Now, this was far from miracle on ice because we were supposed to win big and win big as we had before against Canada. 5-0, but it got tight and it looked like we might lose. But with 2 minutes to go, we got the game tire, and then as you just heard, the overtime game winner, and the U.S. gets the gold medal as the Olympics deliver for all of us yesterday afternoon who happened to be watching this live, thinking back to 1980 when the incredible victory over Russia was not televised live. We had to wait till the evening, and word of mouth spread, people stopping on the Beltway, flashing their lights, all that. And, you know, this was not that because the U.S., again, had been dominant and has been dominant in the last couple of Olympics in winning the gold medal. In fact, they had scored at least 5 goals in every games and outscored teams 31-1. So, you know, it's hard to think of Canada in hockey pulling a massive upset, but had they held on to win 1-0, it wouldn't have, in fact, been a massive upset. But Hillary Knight, who will go down as, I guess, the Mike Eruzione of this year in a very different way. But she scored the game-tying goal, and as you heard the brilliant call by Kenny Albert, Megan Keller scores the game winner 3-on-3 in overtime, and they win. Knight will take her place as the greatest women's Olympic hockey player in U.S. history. She has the most goals, 15, the most points, 33 in her career. She's won a pair of gold medals, and she's hanging it up now. She's 36 years old. She's just gotten engaged to U.S. speed skater Brittany Bowe, and at 36, she is going to call it a career. PTI had the advantage. They don't usually have this type of timing, but they had the advantage of doing their show after this was completed. And as they let it off, of course, it's what Wilbon wanted to talk about.
The United States women beat Canada for the 8th straight time. Again, beat Canada for the 8th straight time, this time for the gold medal in overtime, Tony, after trailing essentially the entire game 1-0. Hillary Knight had the game-tying goal, a little redirection in front of the net off a shot that seemed to be dying to me, but that made Hillary Knight the 5-time Olympian. It made her the all-time leading goal scorer for the United States. And Megan Keller, then in overtime, 3-on-3, Tony, when there's so much space and it's so beautiful, the game which moves with a lot of fluidity anyway. I mean, she just puts on a classic in-and-out move to score the game winner for the gold medal. I mean, this is it. The United States men have not won since 1980. It's impossible to believe that it's been 46 years, but the women, the U.S. women, don't disappoint. They win again.
I'm going to leave all the hockey to you except to echo this particular sentiment. When they go to 3-on-3 in overtime, men or women or whoever's playing, it's fabulous. It's fabulously exciting, 3-on-3. It really is.
Well, we'll see if that happens again today with the U.S. men playing in the semifinals to try to get to the gold medal game on Sunday. Olympics about to wrap up, by the way. If you haven't been paying close attention, they all wrap up on Sunday, and we get back to our normal sports lives. And we get back to the business of the NBA, which, unfortunately, has revolved around tanking. And here in town, we've got essentially the Tank Olympics. This is an odd setup that the All-Star break happens. Then you come out of the All-Star break with hopefully some momentum and off a surprisingly decent All-Star game. Not great, but a hell of a lot better than it's been. We head into the part of the season that matters the most, the stretch run, and then the playoffs. And thanks to the scheduling, this started during the pandemic, so they've started to do this more and more. But rather than have like these back-to-backs where you play in one city one night and you get on a plane and go to another, they just said, well, let's just, schedule these games so we have 2 games in a row, kind of like baseball, not a 3-game series, or even we have sometimes have 4-game series in baseball, but a 2-game series. And that's what we've had going on at Capital One Arena last night, where you had Indiana, which has been the worst team in the East, and the Wizards flirting with either the worst record, second worst, third worst. I don't think they've been any higher than 4, maybe 5 at one point in the season. But they're near to the bottom where they need to stay to hold on to their lottery-protected draft pick. Otherwise, it would go to Oklahoma City. So they're determined to finish near the bottom, which they will. But, this is kind of one of those things where they say, here, you take it. No, you take it. So the Wizards had a 17-point lead in this game against Indiana, which also stinks, and it's due to Therese Halliburton being out for the year. Remember, in the finals last year, tried to play with a calf injury, wound up with a torn Achilles, so he's sitting this year out and will be back. But, no, Indiana said, no, you take it. So the Wizards won the game, and before the game, they had announced that, that guy we traded for with a minor calf strain, Trae Young, and hasn't played since the end of December. Yeah, it's going to take another week here. Oh, and Anthony Davis, who hasn't played since January the 8th, over a month. Yeah, his hand, we're not sure about that, so we're going to take another couple of weeks. They're saying that those 2 guys are going to play before the end of the season. I think they need to be safely near the bottom of the league before they do that. And when you have too many games like last night where you win, that kind of puts that in jeopardy. And Adam Silver did address this over the weekend at the All-Star game, the issue of tanking. And there's now a report that he's about to do something about this. And I'll give you what's being proposed to prevent the tanking. But in case you missed this was Silver last weekend on the issue that has dominated discussion about the NBA. I mean, I don't think there's as much talk about who might win the championship as to who might win the lottery. That's where this league is, and that's not where you want to have your league. And this was Silver with some honesty about the whole situation.
Are we seeing behavior that is worse this year than we've seen in recent memory? Yes, is my view, and which was what led to those fines, and not just those fines, but to my statement that we're going to be looking more closely at the totality of all the circumstances this season in terms of teams' behavior, and very intentionally wanted teams to be on notice. And there is a bit of a note when you see it quality to this. I mean, we spend a lot of time at the league office going back and forth with teams on injury reports, on coaches' decisions. It's not a position necessarily we want to be in, but I'd say also, to address your question, it's not what the fans want at the end of the day, although my caveat is, and this is where teams are in a difficult place, many of you in this room have written, and understandably, about our teams, that the worst place to be, for example, is to be a middle-of-the-road team, either be great or be bad, because then that will help you with the draft. And so in many cases, you have fans of those teams, maybe it's not what they want to pay for to see poor performance on the floor, but they're actually rooting for their teams in some cases to be bad, to improve their draft chances. So I think we're coming at it I'd say in 2 ways. One is, again, focusing on the here and now, the behavior we're seeing from our teams, and doing whatever we can to remind them of what their obligation is to the fans and to their partner teams. But number 2, as I also said in that statement, the competition committee started earlier this year re-examining the whole approach to how the draft lottery works. And ultimately, any changes will require a vote of the Board of Governors, so it then will need to go in front of the board. But there have been lots of different ideas out there over the years, not just necessarily changing the draft lottery odds yet once again, but looking at whether there's a better system here to try to align incentives. I think the point about this year, when you look at totality of the circumstances, I mean, of course, I'm paying attention to what's happening, and the perception is you have a very deep draft class this year, a perception, who knows whether this will be the reality, that the next 2 years' draft classes aren't as good. There's no doubt that's affecting the behavior of our teams, but at the end of the day, I think there needs to. I think all the teams need to step back, the ownership of those teams, and just as a reminder that we're all in this together, that we want to have fair competition, we want to have fair systems, and to keep an eye on the fans, most importantly, and their expectation that we're going to be putting the best product forward.
So what's being reported is Adam Silver has told all 30 of the league's general managers that there will be anti-tanking rules to be put in place before next season. Now, see if you can get your head around these. This is what's being reported by Shams Charania on ESPN. Number one, first-round picks can be protected only for top 4 or top 14-plus selections. I'm not sure exactly what top 14-plus selections means, but instead of having it's top 8 now, that's the thing you're trying to protect. So, if you want to finish in the bottom 4, you can, but if you go above 4, then your pick may go to somebody else. So that might curb tanking. We'll see. Lottery odds, this is an interesting. Now, this one makes some sense. Lottery odds freeze at the trade deadline. That way, you've got like a choice there. Do you say, okay, we stink so much, we're going to just sit here with what we are, or are you on the cusp of being a playoff team, and do you make trades at the deadline to make a run? Could you possibly do that? Okay, that may help. Number 3, no longer allowing a team to pick in the top 4 in consecutive years and or after consecutive bottom 3 finishes. So that would mean the Wizards, who are hoping to have a top 3 pick this year because they have tanked the previous 2 years, would not be eligible to have a pick in the top 4. Now, as it worked out last year, they got number 6. They finished as low as they could possibly finish after having the third or even it may have been the second worst record last season. That's a possibility. Number 4, teams can't pick in the top 4 the year after making the conference finals. That means Indiana, which has already been popped for a $100,000 fine, they went to Game 7 of the NBA Finals last year against Oklahoma City, and they've had to do with Therese Halliburton for the year, and they've had some other injuries as well, and they stink. They're going to be most likely top 4. They'd be ineligible. No, you were too good last year. Lottery odds allocated based on 2-year records. They used to have this for income taxes, income averaging. Like if you had like a really sucky year, and then you had a really big year. Like I guess people in sales really like this. If you had a really buffo year, you wouldn't get popped as much on income tax because you could average in the year before. So it's based on 2-year records instead of 1. That one seems to make some sense to me. Lottery extended to include all play-in teams. So that would mean that you would still have some incentive to make the play-in, but you could still be involved in the lottery. And this takes you back, boy, this is full circle, because this would take you back to what we had in the original draft lottery in 1985, where you took it was only 7 non-playoff teams that year. You put all their names in a hat and you pulled out the winner. Was there hanky-panky to get the Knicks the number 1 pick? That's a conspiracy which may never be answered. And then flatten the odds for all the lottery teams, which is what they did initially in 1985. All 7 of the teams had the chance to get the number 1 pick. They've gone to it's funny because they've gone to the weighted lottery system, and they did it because the Wizards, Bullets, always finished as low as they could possibly finish. No matter what happened, if they could get to as high as 1 and as low as 6, they would get to 6. A couple of times they got to 1, and both times, certainly the Kwame Brown pick, and then taking John Wall. That was the pick to make, and John Wall had a great career here, but they didn't win a championship with him. And you really, if you get a guard, unless the guard's name is Michael Jordan, it's really not going to lead you to a championship. You got to have more than that. But this is a step in the right direction for sure, because the system they have in place now does not work at all. And you'd also like to, if you're, the Wizards, you'd like to be able to play Trae Young and Anthony Davis. See what you got, see how they work with the young players. LeBron on the podcast the other day was throwing flowers at Alex Sarr and Kayshawn George and Bilal Coulibaly. He thinks they've got a young nucleus. This is kind of what Michael Jordan did when he anointed them the team of the future after the Bulls swept them in '97. And thanks to the dysfunction of the Bullets/Wizards, that didn't happen as Chris Webber got traded and Juwan Howard was not really Juwan Howard and, all those different things that added up. But this is worth thinking about for sure. I mean, status quo is not going to work. And I've been listening to people who follow the league and say you can't prevent tanking. Can these rules prevent it? I don't know, but it could make it better than it is right now. You don't want to be in a situation where in the second half of the season, you got a third of the league trying to tank. And maybe one day we'll look back at this little 2-game series between the Wizards and the Pacers and say, yeah, that's how bad it can get. No, you take it. No, I don't want it. You take it. So finally, they took the win last night. Now, I guess this is a must-lose game tonight, right? Both teams now have 15 wins. I think Sacramento's got the worst record, and New Orleans is in there too. But, they're all in that mix for the number one pick, and you don't want to jeopardize that with a win. Back-to-back wins against the team that you're competing with. You are. Essentially, you're competing with the Pacers for the bottom. And that's not the sports that we all grew up with. That's not the way it's supposed to work. Coming up, could they be the Indiana Bears? And let's look closely at what Jayden Daniels said, and let's all calm down. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
This is in no way to make light of a meth addiction, which that promo was just discussing. But we are like with the NFL addicts. We have withdrawal. And so the Super Bowl's been over for over a week, almost 2 weeks now, and we're just so desperate for NFL news. And this kind of swam to the surface this week with some weird reaction to it. This was from a Radio Row interview prior to the Super Bowl. So we are going back 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks on this. Jayden Daniels pushing some product, which is the way it works. That's the Turkish bazaar of how the whole thing is. You have radio stations and television and the network's all set up in this big ballroom, and you walk around with the product and you go from place to place and hawk the product. And then you talk a little bit about football. So Jayden Daniels went on a SI podcast, hosted by a woman who I was looking for the name. I couldn't even find it. But it was, one of those things where he had two like ping pong paddles, and one was a thumbs up and one was a thumbs down, and he would respond to the various statements that the woman would make with the various paddles, the two paddles, and then make a comment on it. So, like one of them is a hot dog, a sandwich, will you win the NFC East, Jordan or LeBron? And then she got to a question which would seem innocuous, didn't get much attention when it was done a couple of weeks ago, but with oh God, I gotta find where I left the meth. Where is it? Here's Jayden Daniels talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. Oh my God.
Eagles fans are the most obnoxious in sports.
That's the only fans I know. I love Eagles fans.
You do? Why do you love them?
They just embody what Philly brings, and be able to go out there and play against them. It's kind of just that thing, and like their environment is kind of like the closest thing you could get to a college environment.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay.
Yeah.
Do they kind of give you more fuel?
Yeah, for sure. If you go out there, you could beat Philly, and Philly is that's a different type. But their fans bring it, man. Especially, as we're rivals with them in the NFC in the East. So I love playing against them.
What's the problem there? You're staring down the beast. I don't get that. And he likes the fact that the fans razz him. He feeds off of that. And he did compare it to playing in the SEC at LSU. Do you think when he played at Alabama, you think they treated him so well? And that was part of the atmosphere that was so compelling for him. Why are people saying, he should not be patting Eagle fans on the back. He should pat the people that support him. Well, I mean, there's a long history of people going to FedEx Field or now it's Northwest Stadium and rooting for the other team. And in fact, when Tress Way signed his new contract, he goes year to year now. And a week or so ago, he was at the complex and he had a little news conference talking about the signing. And he's seen it. I mean, this is a guy who's going into his 13th year with the team, so he's seen the darkest of days under Dan Snyder, including games where the stadium was half full and more than half of those people were rooting for the other team. And he said how wonderful it was the season before when they were stinking it up in the first half against the Falcons and the fans were cheering them as they went into the locker room as if to say, "You'll go get them, boys," which they did. They came back and they won the game in overtime. So what Jayden Daniels is saying to me is nothing. It's just chatter in an insipid Radio Row interview, and I say insipid because I've done plenty of them myself. It is what it is. It's all part of the big show. And to say, oh, he singled out Eagle fans and he needs to support the people who support him. Stop already. Not a big deal. Now, this could be a big deal with Jayden Daniels, or let's say a relatively big deal. And while he was doing his rounds on Radio Row, he did talk about what is scheduled for next month, and that is a flag football game in Saudi Arabia. And when you talk about Saudi Arabia, that's a lot of money. And it may even be a dollar figure that goes to 7. It could be that much money. And so there's the question now as to whether he's going to do it or not. On occasion in these type of games, you do have an injury. You can have an injury anytime, I know, but the competitive juices get going. You're playing against other NFL players. Who knows? And so Mike Florio, again, with desperation for news about the NFL, he does that Pro Football Talk, and he has to put out content just about every day, decided that he would look into what Daniels had said about participating in a flag football game that Tom Brady is a part of. And I don't think Brady crosses the street unless it's an 8-figure deal. Supposedly he got for that roast. Remember the roast that they had? Was it last summer or the summer before? Time flies so quickly. Might have been last summer. The roast that he had he got on Netflix. He got $25 million for that. $25 million to be roasted. Pretty good. So he's probably getting a boatload of money. And if Jayden participates, he'll get significant money. And so this led Florio to do a little snooping around to find out if this is actually going to happen.
I can't get a straight answer on whether or not Jayden Daniels is going to Saudi Arabia for the March 21 flag football tournament. He was announced weeks ago as one of the captains of the 3 teams that will be participating. And when we talked to him at the Super Bowl, the issue came up during our 10, 11-minute interview. And he said, as to whether he's going to Saudi Arabia for the flag football tournament, I don't know yet. And I forgot about it at the time because we were just doing the car wash of interviews. But then it dawned on me last week, hey, wait a minute. They said he's going, and he said, I don't know yet. What's really going on here? And I still can't get a straight answer. I've reached out to his representation multiple times, no response. I've done some other work on this, and I've kind of come to the conclusion. And look, if the folks who are in a position to tell me what's going on aren't willing to tell me, and Fanatics' position is he's all in. Fanatics is putting this thing on, and I've heard from folks there who said, yeah, he posted a promo video on his Instagram story. He's all in. Why won't he say it then? Why won't he say, I'm definitely going? Why won't his agent respond to my emails? And I've been very polite, and I've been very respectful, and it's like, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here. I think that Daniels is kind of hoping the team tells him not to go, and the team doesn't want to tell him not to go, but they're kind of hoping he'll choose not to go. Because I don't think any team wants to get in the way of a guy getting paid probably a significant amount of money to participate in the various things Saudi Arabia is currently doing that entail throwing a bunch of money around to bring athletes and entertainers straight to the country for performances. And look, it's just flag football. The risk of injury is low, but the risk is still there. And you've got Tom Brady, who was hyping this thing up in a podcast appearance with Logan Paul. It's going to be real football. It's going to be real competition. It's going to be intense. It's going to be better than the Pro Bowl. Well, that's a low bar. But somebody said to me recently, if Tom Brady was still an active NFL player, there's no freaking way he'd be doing this. There's no way he'd be doing this. He'd be doing anything to distract from the task at hand. And I think this is the inner conflict. If I'm Jayden Daniels, and if it's me, or if he was my son, my nephew, my friend, my cousin, my brother, my client, my concern would be he's got a very important year coming up. After 2026, he's eligible for a second contract. 2024 was awesome. 2025 was injury-riddled and a disappointment. You had a team with high expectations that won 5 games. A trip to Saudi Arabia, taking on an incremental risk of injury, small as it may be, at a time when your full focus should be getting ready to have the season of my life and elevate the team and position myself for a contract that falls closer to 60 than 10 when it's time to get paid. I don't know what they're paying. I think there's been some reporting about what Brady's getting. I don't know what the players are getting. The ones who are going are getting enough to get them to go. But the Jayden Daniels factor, I mean, if it was me, if it was my son, I wouldn't do it. And I feel like he kind of doesn't want to do it, but it's hard to say no to the check. And, man, it would be nice if the team told me not to do it. And from the team's perspective, we really don't want to be a jerk to this guy. He's the future of the franchise. He's the face of the franchise. We don't want to get in his way of making some extra money, but, man, we really wish he would choose not to do it. We'll find out soon enough. It's 30 days away, March 21. I assume it's going to be televised. I don't know what time it'll be, time change and all that, but we'll see whether or not Jayden Daniels there. And maybe at some point between now and then, we'll get some clarity.
Yeah, I would think so. Let's see. I don't know. The mini camp or the off-season workouts, I don't think start till April. So he'd still be on vacation. But here's the thing about participating in this, whether he's injured or not. Certainly you don't want him to get injured. But let's say he comes out of it fine. It's still going to be something that's hanging over the head of a guy who only played 7 games last year. And if he does not perform well this upcoming season, or if there are injuries again, do you throw this back at him? Oh, well, off season should have been concentrating on getting your body healthy. And he does not get criticized and should not be criticized for the amount of time he puts in the mental part of the game. That's pretty well established. He gets there at 5:30 in the morning and studies tape, and he's mentally prepared. That's not the issue. But just the whole thing about chasing dollars in the offseason. Speaking of chase, no pun intended, Chase Young. Chase Young comes here as the number 2 pick of the draft, like Jayden Daniels. Didn't really perform all that well until the second half of his rookie season. Had a couple of big games at the end and was named Defensive Rookie of the Year. And then rather than participate in any of the offseason programs, he immediately cashed in. Did Family Feud, did a bunch of commercials, didn't show up at any of the so-called voluntary workouts. Still not a great look. Did show up for minicamp, but his career has not gone the way it was supposed to go. Now, he's become a pretty good player with New Orleans. He's going to wind up with a 10, 12-year NFL career. But when you're taking number 2 overall, especially as a defensive player, you're supposed to be a game wrecker. You're supposed to be J.J. Watt, and he's not. He's not that. And did the way he handled himself at the beginning hurt him? I don't know. But he also has missed a lot of time because of injury. Remember, he had that knee injury in the middle of one season and then missed almost all of the next. When guys come back, they get hurt in the playoffs sometimes at ACL. They make it back to training camp, and he did not. So it's just something there. And I think Florio's right. The best thing for him is not to participate in that. This is getting kind of serious in Chicago. I thought it was just a lot of noise. And really, if you look at the distance, see what you're hearing is, oh, my God, Bears, Indiana. Wait a minute. Chicago's in Illinois. Indiana's a separate state. It's not that different than D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. It really isn't. So if this does happen, and it's a ways away from happening, but there's some significant progress on this, and reported yesterday, according to a source close to the team's stadium relocation program, they've gone from exploratory to something close to inevitability, barring an unforeseen change of course by the state of Illinois. But the distance between where this proposed stadium is supposed to take place in Hammond, Indiana, it's about 30 miles from Soldier Field where they play. And if you live in downtown Chicago, there's a train that costs $8 and takes about 30 minutes to get there. So it's not exactly, going to Timbuktu. This is not a good look for the Chicago Bears, but they've never been called the Maryland Redskins or the Maryland Commanders or the Maryland football team. They've always been Washington football team, Washington Redskins, Washington Commanders, and they haven't played in Washington in 30 years. So I to me, this is more about civic pride and tax dollars and all the other things that go into this. The governor of Indiana, Mike Braun, put out on social media, Indiana is open for business and our pro-growth environment continues to attract major opportunities like this partnership with the Bears. Well, of course he's going to do that. Of course he's going to crow a lot, and J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, is going to say, no, we can't allow this to happen. And, this is all going to go through legislature and so forth. Pritzker told reporters Wednesday that he felt progress had been made on stadium talks, though concerns over the percentage of the stadium that would be taxpayer funded and the taxpayers' burden for covering nearly $500 million in Soldier Field renovations remained a sticking point. So they'd have to spend pretty much what it used to cost to build a stadium to fix up Soldier Field, and that would be paid out of tax dollars versus Indiana saying, hey, come on over, come on here. It isn't that different than the New York Giants moving from Yankee Stadium to the Meadowlands complex and then the Jets following a few years later. Howard Cosell used to rail on this franchise movement. It's ruining professional sports. No, it's not. I mean, especially the Meadowlands. It's so easy to get to from anywhere with all the public transportation, trains, buses, and there's ample parking around the stadium. That's not a big deal. But it's the whole name thing. The tradition. They've been playing at Soldier Field since 1971. The Bears have been playing in Chicago for over 100 years. They used to play at Wrigley Field. They may have played someplace else before that. And here's the other thing. There was a stadium that they were talking about in Arlington Heights, and this stadium that's being proposed in Hammond, Indiana, is actually closer to Soldier Field than Arlington Heights is to Soldier Field, and that's in Illinois. Okay, that's the only thing. But they would never, ever be called the Indiana Bears. They would not. And they're still called the New York Giants. They're still called the New York Jets, even though both teams play in New Jersey. It's just the way it is. And as a matter of fact, there was like an overcorrection when the Giants moved from Yankee Stadium to, well, actually, they played in Yankee Stadium until 1974. Yankee Stadium underwent renovations, and they may have played a year at Shea, but they played it definitely 1 year in New Haven, Connecticut at the Yale Bowl. I think that was 74. And then the Meadowlands complex opened in 76, and they were sort of sheepish about playing in New Jersey, so they changed the logo on the helmet, the classic NY, which they've gone back to. They went back to it about 20 years ago, maybe 25, but they went to Giants on the helmet, and occasionally they'll trot that out as a throwback. And when they won their first Super Bowl after the 86 season, the then mayor of New York, Ed Koch, said, they're not going to hold the ticker tape. I'm doing my Cosell. He had a nasally Brooklyn accent. He said, they're not going to have a ticker tape parade. I'm not even going to try it. They're not going to have a ticker tape parade. Let them hold the parade in Moonachie. And that's a suburb. That's a Jersey suburb, which they did. The fire department put together a parade for the Giants in Moonachie, and a bunch of Giants showed up for it. So the battle goes on, and the battle that was going on here for years. Can you get the Redskins? Can you get the Commanders? Can you get the Washington football team back to the District of Columbia? Well, they got a deal, and it's going to happen in 2030. But in the meantime, look at the rest of the NFL. Look at what's happening, and look at the storied Chicago Bears, who not only may not be in Chicago anymore, they may not even be in the state of Illinois. You know what? Everybody will survive. And the NFL, more than anything else, is a television show. It is. And they're not building the monster stadiums anymore. It used to be, you got to have 80,000 people to host a Super Bowl. Not anymore. 65,000-seat stadium. The one they had in Las Vegas a couple of years ago, 61,000. It's all about the TV. It's all about the TV dollars. And for the majority, not talking about the 60-plus thousand that will show up for the games, I'm talking about the majority of Bears fans, got to be in the millions even in just the Chicago metropolitan area. They consume it like most of us do in the comfort of their home. The bathroom is 3 steps away, 10 steps away, and the cold beer is in the refrigerator, and you don't have to pay $15 for it. No, that's it's a lot of noise, but in the end, teams settle into a stadium, games get played, and the television is what it's all about. All right, coming up, we'll get more into what is going on in the NBA, the NFL, and how about Major League Baseball, which is gearing up for an enormous fight. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630.
So, Barry Sanders. Remember there was a time where we used to say, Barry Sanders, why doesn't he come back? Well, he finally reached the point where he's too old for that to happen. He was on the big podcast with Shaq and said some compelling things about his past. And what's forgotten about Barry Sanders, who spent his career with the Detroit Lions, not winning very much, was just how good he was in the 1 year that he was a starter in college. He put together a running back season which probably will never be matched the way they throw the ball these days. And to think that he sat on the bench for 2 years before he finally got his opportunity to play, pretty remarkable. We'll get to that before the end of the hour. We're gearing up for a big battle in baseball. Enjoy this season while you can, because this time next year, I can almost guarantee we won't have spring training. We may eventually get to it. It may happen sometime in March. But the way things seem to be lining up, it's going to be a battle royale. And the possibility of the entire season being knocked out is there. And don't say it can't happen, because it happened in hockey 20 years ago. The entire, I think it was 2004-2005 season was not played at all. It should have been the rookie year for Alex Ovechkin. He was the number 1 pick of the Caps that year, but they didn't have a season. No season whatsoever. And I think that's in play in baseball. Look, we've had a World Series knocked out. It was 30 years ago, over 30 years ago, but it happened. People didn't think that would happen. It did. So this is the way things are going. The wind is blowing in that direction. And the Players Association did not help itself this week with the embarrassment they suffered with Tony Clark. Tony Clark, head of the Players Association, former player, which in my opinion generally doesn't work too well. I think you want to have somebody who's really experienced in labor dealing with these things, as Marvin Miller was when he became head of the Players Association in 1966 and led them through one of the most incredible periods in sports history, if not the most incredible, achieving free agency for his players and what followed, and the strength of the union. And the union is still strong, and they generally win these things. But this time, the owners are determined that's not going to happen, and the disparity that we're seeing is bigger than it's ever been. You know, we have the Dodgers, who are winning. They won the last 2 World Series. You could say, well, the Mets are spending money too, and they aren't winning. That's true. But the Dodgers aren't even blinking at the luxury tax, which is supposed to prevent what they're doing. They're paying more in luxury tax than some teams are paying in payroll. Many teams are paying in payroll, like $140 million or something, just in tax, which that tax money was supposed to prevent what's happening here, because the teams are supposed to take that luxury tax money and spend it on players, and they're not doing that. So we had Clark forced out after reports that he had an inappropriate relationship with his sister-in-law, who was employed by the Players Association. Remember that. before you say, well, he had an affair. No, he had an affair with an employee of the Players Association, which happened to be his sister-in-law. That's the important issue there. So anyway, the USA Today had an interview with the replacement. His name is Bruce Meyer, and what to expect. And this is not a guy who is going to go unnoticed. Both sides are aware of Bruce Meyer, who's been involved in the Players Association for a long time. And in this story, they say there are agents who believe he favors only Scott Boras and other powerful agents. There are players who think he could be condescending. And he's doing what he can to say, no, Scott Boras doesn't control me. Well, nobody has more interest in preventing a salary cap than Scott Boras. Scott Boras is doing this for ego now. He's not doing this for money. And his ego tells him, get the best deal I can for the players. And I only represent superstars. And to get superstars the most money, you can't have a salary cap. So he is going to fight like hell to make sure that there's no salary cap. But Bruce Meyer is insisting, no. He said, I'm basically saying I'm my own man. And asked about the question of Boras running the show, he said, I almost don't want to dignify it. Scott is an agent. He represents a lot of players. He has no more influence over the running of the union than any other agent. And the continuous suggestions to the contrary, which I believe are mostly originated by the league, are just an attempt at divisiveness. Every agent is valuable to us. Every agent represents players who are our clients, our constituents. Every agent has our ear, and we take it seriously. Okay. 2 years ago, there were 21 players who tried to lead a coup to have Bruce Meyer fired and replaced by attorney Harry Marino, who helped to unionize the minor league players, and now he's responsible for the well-being of 1,200 major leaguers. The minor leaguers were really, so their union has, or the union has looked out for them much better than it has in the past. And the players were trying to get Meyer out of there because I guess he didn't really care about the minor leaguers. And so Meyer said, well, you're never going to have everybody agreeing on everyone. You're never going to get everybody on the same page, but you do what you can. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Meyer's not young. He's 64 years old. He was hired by Don Fehr. Don Fehr was the one who replaced Marvin Miller. Don Fehr, though, was at the NHL Players Association, and his name has been thrown around as a possibility to return if Meyer does not give them what they're looking for. And his stance is the same as Scott Boras. We can't have a salary cap, and here's his reason why. We don't believe in a system that's basically a zero-sum game. If we pay you, we've got to take that out of the pocket of another player. That's how the other salary cap systems work. What happens is the top guys get paid, and then everybody else gets what's left over. Well, guess what? That's happening without a salary cap, because what you're seeing is the middle class of baseball is pretty much disappearing. If you're not a superstar and able to jump into that level where, at the top of the chain is Juan Soto at $756 million, you're probably not going to get that second contract, which pays you $7 to $8 million a year. You're not going to get that. Those guys are getting flushed out. And it seems to me that the union is supposed to represent the rank and file, not the superstars. But this system is set up so that you can have those Juan Soto type of contracts. He also goes on to say the salary cap doesn't help players at any level, doesn't help the middle-class players. They get screwed the most in these systems, and once you're in that system, the history is that it becomes worse and worse for the players over time. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a union guy, leader. I don't really understand all that. It just seems to me that's entirely false. More from Meyer. He says, we can make improvements for players at every level in many ways without going down the road of something that its union has fought against for literal generations. Now, the NFL, they didn't have a salary cap until they had free agency. And once they had free agency, they needed a so-called governor on that. They did come up with the franchise tag, which is supposed to prevent, things from going really insane on that. And maybe it has to a degree, but it's a lot different in football. And the players are more disposable, and the careers are shorter than they are in baseball. The reason that the original salary cap came into the NBA was because the league was in big trouble. This was a period of time where there were franchises folding,
and they needed some cost containment, and they had a hard cap at the beginning. Red Auerbach was the one who argued for the quote-unquote Larry Bird rule, and the Bird rule was you shouldn't have to lose your top star because you need to stay under the cap. So that softened the cap, allowed you to pay one player on your team above the salary cap, and that's led to the system that they have now. And, there's no worries about NBA franchises folding up, and you got players in some cases making $60, $70 million a year. Just it's the way it's working. But for baseball, the owners are determined this time, and while they've never really won in the past, they may win. And the way I look at this guy, Bruce Meyer, he might be the one. He might be the straw that breaks the camel's back on the baseball players standing up to the owners on cap. This was Tony and Mike yesterday on the hiring of Bruce Meyer and what it means.
Meyer is a lawyer who's been the union's lead negotiator since 2018. He says the salary cap would be the ultimate restriction on players. According to Bob Nightingale of USA Today, owners consider Meyer tenacious, unreasonable, and bad for baseball. Tony, what do you make of the players choosing him?
Okay, so as you said, he's been the lead negotiator since 2018. He has experience in this particular thing. And as you said, and I read that Nightingale piece as well, and he said that the owners specifically hate this guy. They personally hate him. Okay, if I were a baseball player, I would not care that Tony Clark is out because he's not a negotiator. He's a first baseman. This guy Meyer is a negotiator. And it seems to me, Mike, that every time the baseball players get near a strike or a lockout or whatever happens, ultimately, I think they win. So I would be happy with this guy as my lead voice. I mean, I would think that that's the right way to go. He's going to tell the players, look, we don't want a salary cap. The owners want a salary cap, and anything the owners want is bad for us. That's going to be his message. And if that's his message, then there's no give there. There's no give. It's just a hard line stance all the way down the line. And I mean, the players are not going to buy the cap. They're not.
No, they're not. And Tony, his selection, it just hardens the positions. I don't know that there's any sign that is encouraging. Like, could they have appointed somebody as interim executive director who would have led me to say, oh, wow, I think this is the move that is going to open up negotiations and lead to a complete season in 27. No, I don't. I think we're headed for this because it seems like only the owners can avoid this. And it seems like this time, Tony, unlike other years where, it got tabled and they moved it aside, something else was able to mollify one side or the other. It seems like this time the owners are ready via the Los Angeles Dodgers of going to the mat and saying, we want a cap and we'll lock you out until we get one.
I agree. And I would just, I don't think a cap is so terrible. If you have a high floor, I think that helps a lot of average players. I mean, the NBA players make a lot more money than baseball players, and they have a cap.
They do.
The NFL players don't make more than baseball players, but there's 50 of them on every team. And I have not yet heard anyone say, I'm quitting this job to go work at Meineke. I feel like you feel that we're in a bad position here, and it's too bad because baseball in the last couple of years, by shortening the game and having great playoffs and World Series, they've made a move.
Yeah, but I will say this. Tom Lavero said this to me some years ago. He said, when baseball had the strike of 1994 and they knocked out the World Series, they did not have the rest of the season, they realized there's nothing they can do to kill the sport. So it's not like the owners were fearful of, oh, man, if we knock out the last part of the season, we don't have any playoffs, we don't have a World Series, fans are never going to come back. They came back. Cal Ripken gets a lot of credit for that, and he was helpful, and he did more than his share as he was chasing Lou Gehrig's record, and he would stay at the ballpark till 2 hours after the game, signing as many autographs as people wanted. He was making the game accessible again. He understood his responsibility, and nobody carried it like he did. But Tom also points this out. He said, look, that was the period of time of the stadium boom. Camden Yards was built in 1992, and then there were stadiums all over the country being built. And if you remember, when Camden Yards opened, Cal was still on track to break the record, but it was still a long way away. There wasn't any guarantee on that, and that's not what drew people to the park. It was the park. Oh, look at this retro ballpark with the warehouses, one of the walls, and it was so cool. I mean, people were coming from all over the country to go to Camden Yards. That was an old-style ballpark that was brand new. It changed the way that parks were built. Larry Lucchino gets a lot of credit for that. He was, I think, the president of the team at the time, and he made that happen. So there's a lot going on right now that looks very, very bad for baseball. And if I had to bet, I would bet that at least half of the 2027 season is going to be knocked out. But the damage that will be done long-term to the game will not be severe. I mean, you heard that a lot in 94. Oh, pox on both their houses. I'm through with it. I'm never going back. He went back. They went back in 1995, even though they had a lockout that spilled into part of the 1995 season. I think they got 162 games in, but they didn't start until later. And that actually led Michael Jordan back to the NBA. That's another what if. What if there no labor issue? Would Jordan have stayed with baseball? Interesting, because the reason that he came back, at least the reason that was given, was that he was not going to be with scab teams. And the way that worked then, if you weren't in the major leagues, they could have you play with these replacement players since you weren't a member of the union by not being a major leaguer. And Jordan did not want to be a part of any scab team, so he said, "Oh, the hell with it, I'll go back and play basketball." Maybe. I mean, maybe that was the total motivation, or maybe it was, I'm working like crazy at this, and I'm hitting barely 200. That could have in the minor leagues, and that may have been the picture. But had he made the majors, he and Terry Francona, who was his manager in Birmingham, said if he'd have stayed with it, he could have made the majors. But would Jordan have been satisfied to be a guy who got 4 appearances a week or something like that, not full games, but pinch running and things like that? I don't see it. He was used to being the man. The baseball was a nice experimentation. He stuck with it longer than most people would. Full season. Played the 1994 season, but then came back in 1995. That'll do it for me for the week. See you back here Monday morning at 9 a.m.